Hello and welcome to the Permagov podcast, where we talk about developments in the EU marine governance and how to improve it. My name is Pavel Kogut, and in this first episode, we're going to explore the idea of multi-level collaborative marine governance. We chose this topic to kickstart the series because the way in which marine governance arrangements are currently organized prevents successful implementation of the European Green Deal, which requires progress not just on land, but also at sea to turn the European Union into the first resource-efficient and climate-neutral continent by 2050. And to facilitate this transition, status quo is really no longer an option. New forms of governance are needed. And to discuss how change and innovation can be achieved in marine governance, I'm joined by two experts, Judith van Leeuwen and Carolijn van Noort. Judith is an associate professor at the Environmental Policy Group of Wageningen University in the Netherlands. Her marine research covers how sustainability is governed in a range of marine sectors and issues, including international shipping, offshore extractive industry, and plastic pollution. Judith is the coordinator of the Permagov project as well. Carolijn is an associate professor in blue governance at the Center for Blue Governance of Aalborg University in Denmark. Her research focuses on the governance and management of marine and ocean spaces, particularly in relation to multi-level and multi-actor collaboration, digitalization, and strategic communication. She is one of the work package leads in the Permagov project. Judith and Carolijn, hello to both of you. I know you've been developing something called the multi-layered collaborative marine governance model. Judith, what is it and how can it help?
Yes, Pavel. As you mentioned, it's important to create innovation and change in marine governance, as the European Green Deal sets ambitious aims when it comes to protecting the marine environment. For example, related to expanding offshore renewable energy, expanding marine protected areas, decarbonizing shipping and ports, and improving the sustainability of blue food. Now, within the Permagov project, our objective is to develop a marine governance assessment framework to help assess, first, which barriers and enablers currently exist in various marine governance arrangements that hamper and drive innovation and change. And in marine governance arrangements, actors interact during decision-making and implementation processes, and actors differ in how they perceive the main marine challenges regulated under the European Green Deal and which solutions should be put forward to achieve the European Green Deal objectives. And there's also a difference between the actors in how they are able to influence decision-making and implementation of policies that are there to implement the European Green Deal objectives. Now, we conduct this governance assessment in 9 case studies, and they address 4 issue areas: maritime transport, marine energy, marine life, and marine plastic pollution. And these case studies also take place in either the Celtic Sea, the North Sea, the Baltic Sea, and 2 areas within the Mediterranean Sea, around Spain and Italy. And based on the assessment of these barriers and enablers that hamper or facilitate marine governance change, it's then also possible to identify potential ways to address these barriers or to leverage the enablers. Now, the multi-layered collaborative marine governance model is a key component of this marine governance assessment framework. And the model puts particular emphasis on the multi-layered nature of European decision-making for the marine environment. And the marine environment is transboundary in nature, so there are international, European, national, and local policies and decisions that are important for the European Green Deal. And the model also pays attention to collaboration between actors to achieve marine protection objectives, including then those under the European Green Deal.
That's a very nice overview, Judith. Thanks. And if we can go to you, Carolijn, now. Can you tell us more about the model and how it works?
Of course. So in our multi-layered collaborative marine governance model, we examine innovation and change in marine governance. Now let's look a little bit more. What do we mean with innovation and change? Now, change, as we see it, is the gradual formation of the actors, rules, resources, and discourses, which are the substance and organization of marine governance arrangements. In comparison, innovations are the disruptive transformations that are non-incremental. For example, the sudden advance of a new digital tool or a new actor or a change of political discourses about the European Green Deal. So now we understand a bit more about innovation and change. In the model, we have developed the model based on various components. Now, the model integrates 4 interactive components. These are institutional attributes, collaborative dynamics, governance capabilities, and e-governance. Now, each of these 4 components, or building blocks, perhaps that's easier to understand, they can be understood as enablers and barriers to change and innovation. Now, let's look at each of these barriers in details. So, to understand institutional barriers, we need to explain what institutions do. So, of course, institutions play a double role in relation to the adaptation of governance arrangements, as they both constrain and enable the adaptation of these arrangements. In our research, we explore a range of institutional attributes that enable or constrain progress towards realizing the European Green Deal vision and targets. For instance, there is actor accountability. What does that mean? It means a lack of transparency in decision-making processes and the absence of feedback mechanisms. Another barrier or another institutional attribute would be the development and use of knowledge, which refers to the exclusion or marginalization of relevant knowledge that provides that would culminate in inappropriate science policy interfaces. Now let's look at the second component of the model, or building block of our multi-layered collaborative marine governance model, which would be collaborative dynamics. So collaborative dynamic consists of 3 components: principled engagement, shared motivation, and capacity for joint action. These components allow us to explain how actors in governance arrangements jointly discuss problems and opportunities and come to an agreement on joint action. Now, these components also shed light on the conditions and resources that enable effective relationship. For example, mutual trust is very helpful for collaboration, as well as mutual understanding. Now, the third component of our multi-layered collaborative marine governance model is governance capabilities. Now, governance capabilities draws specific attention to the abilities of actors in multi-layered governance arrangements to observe and act upon the European Green Deal objective. So what can they do? What are they able to do so? So governance capabilities are operationalized in 5 abilities. We have reflexivity, meaning the ability to deal with multiple frames in society and policy. Resilience, or also referred to as agility, which refers to flexible adaptation to frequently occurring and uncertain changes. A third governance capability would be revitalization or innovation drive. That is, unblocking deadlocks and stagnations in policy processes. A fourth governance capability would be rescaling, which is the ability to address mismatches between the scale of a problem and the scale at which it is governed. And the last governance capability would be responsiveness, that is responding wisely to changing agendas and public demand. Now, the fourth and last component of the multi-layered collaborative marine governance model is e-governance. Now, in the Permagov project, we conceptualize e-governance as the development and application of digital processes or technologies which are aimed at improving the governance and/or management of marine activities and resources within and across sectors and governance levels. So there are multiple ways that e-governance arrangements enable the effective implementation of the Green Deal. Specifically, some digital tools can help actors in multi-layered governance arrangements with seeing and knowing governance issues. They help engage as well as participate in addressing issues. And lastly, they can help in designing interventions and actions. Now, taken together, the multi-layered collaborative marine governance model is an analytical tool to evaluate change and innovation. Now, having said that, it is not a normative tool with an agreed definition of what good governance is in the context of the European Green Deal implementation. Rather, the model enables the evaluation of how and the extent that a governance arrangement is changing and innovating. Notably, such arrangements are always in flux, hence the analysis will provide a snapshot of performance at a particular point in time.
Wow, what a comprehensive framework, I must say. Now, Judith, it would be really nice to understand how all these different components interact and are linked with one another.
Yes, as mentioned, the purpose of the model is to identify barriers and enablers in fostering change and innovation in marine governance, so in these marine governance arrangements, and that govern the marine environment in, for example, maritime shipping, energy, marine conservation, and marine pollution. And in order to do that, it's important to not just look at the components of the model, the building blocks separately. So within the Permagov project, we're currently also busy with exploring the linkages between the components because these components influence each other. For example, there might be institutional barriers related to access to information and knowledge about, for example, marine plastic pollution, which means that actors might not be able to identify the measures that are most needed to reduce marine plastic pollution. Now, this lack of information and knowledge, the institutional barrier, could be because collaboration is limited. We see this, for example, in Spain, where collaboration between marine pollution experts and policymakers that aim to reduce marine plastic pollution, and the agricultural sector that uses a lot of plastic and also contributes to marine plastic pollution, and their collaboration is actually limited. For example, also because there are not many digital ways or other ways to pool marine pollution data and combine that with data around plastic use and waste from agriculture. So apparently, these actors actually lack the capability of making a bridge and finding each other to collaborate. So identifying the dynamic between the model building blocks and components helps us to identify actually a range of possible innovations that can then change and innovate marine governance arrangements to implement the European Green Deal policies. For example, if we go back to the example in Spain around marine plastic pollution, we could think of improving data sharing and research through the use of e-governance and digital tools. Or we could think of facilitating exchange and collaboration between scientists and policymakers from both the marine pollution domain and agriculture.
That's very interesting, Judith. And maybe the last point that you mentioned, collaboration between scientists and policymakers, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on how you're going to make this academic tool useful for practitioners, policymakers, and other stakeholders?
Yeah, indeed. As you've heard, the model, the framework is very theoretical, but a crucial aspect in developing the model and also the way we use it in our 9 case studies is that we have been collaborating with end users. So each case study within Permagov has a dedicated end user for the results we're developing, including the model and the application. And these end users, they come from industry, policymaking institutions, or NGOs. And these end users collaborate with the researchers that are using the assessment framework and the multi-layered collaborative marine governance model to identify the main governance challenges in each case study. So the barriers and enablers towards marine governance change and innovation. And these end users are part of the Permagov consortium. So they've also been part of the development and application of the model since we started developing it. And that means that there has been a constant flow of feedback between the researcher that uses the complex theoretical model to analyze the case study and the end user who has been providing input from hands-on experiences from their industry, policymaking, and advocacy work.
Right. So you have this really nice multi-stakeholder framework in place to test and validate the model. And maybe we can hear from Carolijn what steps exactly were taken to validate this model, the multi-layered collaborative governance model with end users?
Of course. So this has been a very exciting process. Now, we validated and refined the model with end users and stakeholders in the 9 case studies that focus on maritime transport, marine energy, marine life, and marine plastic pollution. Now, the process of validation focused on assessing the usefulness of the model to structure a governance analysis. For example, the ease of doing research, value generation, and of course, creating depth and comprehensiveness of the case. Now, the process of refining the model is intended to clarify what specific processes and structures enable and/or constrain governance performance in the case studies. And here we then identified or explored linkages between model components and subcomponents. And linkages were just further explained by Judith. Now, if we look more specifically at the data collection strategy, this consisted of a range of tasks that enabled an in-depth analysis of the case using the multi-layered collaborative marine governance model as a guiding tool. Now, a key component of this process was conducting interviews with stakeholders. Another major milestone in the process was the process of validation panels. Now, the purpose of the validation panel was to validate the initial case study analysis, which was developed based on desk research and interviews. Now, the case study leads used one of 4 available validation panel approaches, namely in-person panels, hybrid panels, virtual panels, or written assessments. Now, subsequently, to further refine the model, we identified linkages of model components and subcomponents in the case studies, given the specific context and governance policy characteristics. Now, the data collection strategy resulted in significant data, and every case study lead, together with their end user, has written a dedicated case study report. And each of these reports was organized based on model components and subcomponents of the multi-layered collaborative marine governance model. Now, the reports are a snapshot of how a governance arrangement is changing and innovating in 2024 with a cutoff date of October 2024. Now, the linkage section provides analytical depth to the case study analysis and further refined the model for the case studies. Each of the reports also provides an overview of the main governance challenges as identified in the data analysis and experienced by the end users. Moreover, given our embrace to reflection, each of the case study leads provided a reflection of the use value of the multi-layered collaborative marine governance model to study change and innovation. Now, the entire methodology can be read in the forthcoming Permagov deliverable titled Validation of the Multi-Layered Collaborative Marine Governance Model.
Wow, great. Clearly, a lot of work has been done conceptualizing and validating the model. Is this the end of the journey then, or you have some other plans? What else are you going to do with it?
Well, we do have more plans because a second objective of the Permagov project is to develop collaborative and e-governance strategies for the 9 case studies. So we are using the model as part of the framework to assess the main barriers and enablers in implementing the European Green Deal policies to achieve various marine-related sustainability objectives. And the outcome of this application is then the identification of a range of possible governance innovations that can potentially help innovate and change a marine governance arrangements to overcome barriers and make better use of existing enablers. And this is something we will be working on over the next half year. So by the summer of 2025, we should have identified this range of governance innovations. And these innovations relate to the components of the model, so they can focus on facilitating collaboration between actors or between sectors, or also sometimes between different governance levels, or it can focus on e-governance approaches that can help facilitate exchange and sharing of data and knowledge or enhance participation. And we want to select per case study then one of such a potential governance innovation and further develop this through developing a strategy to implement this innovation, or perhaps, if feasible, already work actively towards implementing the innovation. Now, which innovation we select and how far we will be able to come with developing this innovation, either as a strategy or already implementing it, will, among others, depend on our end users. And the end users will play an active role in facilitating the strategy's development and implementation. But it will also depend on input from our e-governance experts and the types of e-governance approaches they will be able to help develop or implement. An important aspect of the Permagov project, therefore, is to enhance the capabilities of the end users themselves with the help of the e-governance experts that are also part of our consortium to help enact change and innovation in marine governance arrangements.
Thanks, Judith. And maybe one more question for you, Carolyn. You mentioned a report where the model is captured, 4.2, I think, and that will be available at a later stage. And how are you going to promote it, or how will the public be able to learn about it? Do you plan to launch some communications around it?
Yes, we have several very exciting plans for the next 2 years. Now, first, we will disseminate the project deliverables through various online media and in-person events, in which we explain what the multi-layered collaborative marine governance model is and how we validated and refined it with the support of end users. Now, second, the consortium is developing a special issue, which is designed to discuss and advance our conceptual and empirical understanding about how institutional attributes, collaborative dynamics, e-governance, and governance capabilities individually but also collectively shape innovation and change processes in marine governance under the European Green Deal. Now, the contributions will show through empirical case studies how governance processes are changing and innovating. So we're working actively on developing this special issue. And third, we will engage in knowledge exchanges with sister projects that are funded by Horizon Europe, specifically Blue Green Gov and CrossGov. And lastly, we will be presenting our research at several key ocean and marine conferences, including the upcoming United Nations One Ocean Science Congress in Nice. So these are 4 exciting developments in terms of communication and dissemination.
Great. Well, I certainly learned a lot today from all your fascinating ideas. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, Judith and Carolyn. And thanks to our audience for listening. You can go to www.permagov.eu to learn more about the Permagov project and in the project where this model is being developed and tested. Also, there you can find links to the various deliverables already submitted and future ones that are yet to be created. See you in the next one.